Everyone else seemed to be just a kid running around, laughing, carefree. But you weren't. You were watching, listening, paying attention to things no child should have to notice. You could sense tension before anyone said a word. You knew when something was wrong without being told. While others were playing, you were thinking, planning, adapting. Let me ask you something honest. Did you ever really get to be a child? Or were you quietly stepping into adulthood long before you were ready? If that question hits something deep inside you, then you're not strange, and you're not too serious. You're not the only one who felt different growing up. The truth is, you didn't develop this way by accident. You adapted. You learned how to function in an environment that required more from you than it should have. What people saw as maturity was actually something else entirely. You didn't grow up faster because you were special. You grew up faster because you had to. And there's a psychological explanation for that. Psychologists call this phenomenon pseudo-maturity. On the outside, you appear composed, responsible, and emotionally aware beyond your years. But internally, parts of you never had the chance to fully develop in a safe and natural way. It's not true maturity, it's a survival adaptation wearing the mask of maturity. You learned how to manage responsibilities, but not necessarily how to process your own emotions. You became capable, but not supported. And that gap between how you appear and how you feel can quietly follow you into adulthood. At the root of this experience is something called parentification. It happens when a child is placed into the role of a caregiver emotionally, physically, or both because the adults around them are unable to fulfill that role. Instead of being cared for, you became the one doing the caring. Maybe you took responsibility for siblings, managed household stress, or learned to regulate your parents' emotions. The roles were reversed, not by choice, but by necessity. And when that happens, childhood doesn't disappear all at once, it slowly gets replaced by responsibility. Picture this: you're 9 years old, standing in a quiet kitchen that feels heavier than it should. No one is telling you what to do, but you already know it's up to you. Maybe your siblings are hungry, maybe something feels off in the house, but either way, you don't wait. You climb onto the counter, open the fridge, and figure it out. You don't cry, you don't complain, and you definitely don't ask for help because somewhere along the way, you learned that help wasn't coming, so you handled it. And in that moment, without anyone noticing, a child quietly stepped into a role they were never meant to carry. When a child grows up in that kind of environment, their brain adapts in ways that are meant to protect them, but those changes don't just disappear with time. You become hyper-aware, constantly scanning for shifts in tone, mood, or energy. Your brain is wired to detect potential problems before they even happen. This is called hypervigilance, and it means your nervous system rarely, if ever, fully relaxes. Even in calm situations, something inside you stays alert, like it's waiting for the next thing to go wrong. Safety doesn't feel natural, it feels temporary. This isn't just a personal experience, it's backed by research. One of the most well-known studies, called the Adverse Childhood Experiences ACE study, followed over 17,000 people and found a clear pattern. The more stress and instability someone faced in childhood, the higher their risk of mental and physical health issues later in life. Anxiety, depression, even chronic illness, all of it was connected. It revealed something powerful. Childhood isn't something we simply grow out of. It shapes the way our bodies and minds function for years to come. The confusing part is that many of the traits you developed are things people admire. You're responsible. You're dependable. You notice what others don't. You can read a room in seconds, stay calm under pressure, and handle situations that overwhelm others. On the surface, it looks like strength, and in many ways, it is. But these traits didn't come from ease. They came from necessity. You didn't choose to become this capable, you became this way because you had to. These are survival skills, shaped in an environment where being aware, independent, and emotionally tuned in wasn't optional, it was essential. As impressive as these traits may seem, there's an important truth most people overlook: they're not purely strengths. They're trauma responses. The ability to handle everything alone, to stay calm no matter what, to anticipate everyone's needs, those didn't come from a place of security. They came from having no other option. Your mind and body learned to survive by adapting, by staying alert, by becoming self-reliant. What looks like strength is often just survival dressed up in something more socially acceptable. But every survival strategy comes with a cost. You don't really know how to rest because slowing down feels unfamiliar and unsafe. Trust doesn't come easily, because experience taught you that relying on others leads to disappointment. So you carry everything yourself. You stay strong, even when you're exhausted. You keep going, even when your body is asking you to stop. And over time, that constant tension becomes your normal. You're always on, always holding things together, always bracing for what might go wrong. From the outside, it looks like resilience. On the inside, it feels like never being able to fully exhale. In relationships, this pattern can be especially painful. You care deeply, but there's always a part of you that stays guarded. You may find yourself overgiving, trying to anticipate your partner's needs, hoping that if you do enough, they won't leave. But at the same time, you struggle to fully trust that someone will stay. There's a quiet fear underneath it all, the fear of abandonment. So you love carefully, with one foot in and one foot out, protecting yourself from a loss you feel like you've already experienced before. At work and in social settings, you often become the one everyone depends on. You take on more than you should, say yes when you want to say no, and push yourself beyond your limits without even realizing it. Being useful becomes part of your identity. You're the reliable one, the problem solver, the person who keeps everything running. But underneath that, there's pressure because slowing down or stepping back doesn't feel like an option. It feels like losing control, or worse, losing your value. One of the hardest parts about this experience is that the world often rewards it. People say things like, "She's so mature for her age," or "He never causes any trouble." On the surface, those sound like compliments, but underneath, they reveal something deeper. This is what psychologists call adultification bias, where a child's survival behavior is mistaken for personality or strength. Instead of asking why a child is so self-sufficient, people admire it. And without realizing it, they reinforce the very patterns that came from unmet needs. Not everything you develop from that experience needs to be let go. Some parts of you are real strengths: your empathy, your awareness, your ability to stay grounded when things get chaotic. Those are qualities worth keeping. But other parts are more like armor. The inability to ask for help, the guilt you feel when you rest, the constant pressure to handle everything alone, those aren't strengths, they're protection. And the key isn't to erase who you are, but to gently separate what truly belongs to you from what you built just to survive. Healing doesn't start with fixing yourself, it starts with understanding that you were never broken to begin with. It begins by allowing yourself to feel what was never fully felt. Grief for the childhood you didn't get to have, for the moments you had to be strong when you should have been safe. That grief isn't weakness, it's honesty. And from that place, something new can begin. You can slowly learn what it feels like to rest without guilt, to receive without earning it, to trust without constantly preparing for loss. That secure base you never had growing up, it's something you can build now, step by step, within yourself and with the right people. You don't have to keep proving your worth through exhaustion. You don't have to carry everything alone anymore. You survived something difficult that matters, but now you get to choose something different. And if this story feels like yours, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it, say something, even just one word, because someone else out there is still carrying this silently, and your voice might be the thing that helps them feel seen.